Hello, and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm, brought to you by funkinstuff.net. This is the interview show that gets what? Deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your trusty host, Scott Goldfine, musicologist and author of Everything is on the One, the First Guide to Funk. And I have your copy. Get on over to Amazon, pick one up. You'll be so glad you did. Whether you're watching or listening, as always, I thank you so much for your continued support. Speaking of which, if you haven't already done so, subscribe. Subscribe at YouTube to the Funk and Stuff channel. That's where Truth and Rhythm resides. We love that support. Keep the subscriptions rolling in. Tell family, tell friends. This episode features one of the funkiest, most soulful, sassy, sexy, sultry, and straight-out badass female singers of the post-1980s era. I'm speaking of the sensational Jennifer Durkin. While I do not generally get caught up on racial matters, I would be remiss not to express that Jen Durkin is quite possibly the most authentic sounding white female funk and soul vocalist since the late, great Tina Marie. Best known for her recording extensive touring with one of the principal bands that kept funk alive in the 1990s, Deep Banana Blackout, Durkin has also led and been featured in several other groups. And she has shared the stage and performed with some of the most celebrated funk and rock musicians, including touring with Bernie Worrell and playing with Fred Wesley, Clyde Stubblefield, George Porter Jr., as well as other P-Funk and Grateful Dead alumni. Drawing on influences like Funkadelic, Tower of Power, The Meters, Led Zeppelin, and more, Deep Banana Blackout emerged in 1995 and went on to release 4 albums, 1 studio record, and 3 live sets. They featured primarily original compositions, with the final one coming in 2002. Where they really made an impact was on the road. That's where they developed a faithful nationwide following. As far as what was released, nothing hit harder than DBB's 1998 live double CD Rowdy Duty. That fantastic set's catchy sing-songy Bump and Sway, swinging and seductive Breakfast at Volo's, James Brown inspired Get Y'all in the Mood, rhythmically rocking Take the Time, P-Funk Tip of the Hat, Pure Gravy, and Headhunters cover, God Made Me Funky, were among the decade's prime funk highlights. In this in-depth interview, the charming and humble Durkin reveals her remarkable 25-year career, replete with thrills, spills, chills, and daffodils. In addition to getting deep with Deep Banana Blackout, she reminisces about her wondrous time with keyboard legend Worrell, the ups and downs of dealing with deadheads, coping with the rigors of the road and the music industry in general, her weakness for drummers, winning an American Music Award, and continuing to plug away with multiple projects today. My first exposure to Jen Durkin was seeing her front Deep Banana Blackout as an opening act for Government Mule in the mid-1990s at Hollywood's House of Blues. I was floored. They remained perhaps the hottest band I had not heard of before seeing them. So then, let's get down to it with a very special vocalist who has more chops than a karate master. Hey, welcome once again to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership, where I'm delighted to be able to bring to you a young lady whose fiery and powerful singing elevated every project she's ever been a part of to high-soaring and supremely soulful heights. I'm referring to Jennifer Pipes Durkin, who achieved her greatest notoriety as lead singer of the jam in 1990s funk band Deep Banana Blackout, and subsequently performed with several other groups, as well as legendary musicians like P-Funk's Bernie Worrell. Jen, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Where are you coming to us from today?
I live in Connecticut, right near the Bridgeport line in a neighborhood called Black Rock.
Very cool. So I had told you, offline, big fan, been following Deep Banana Blackout ever since probably about the time you guys got going, because I saw you initially open up for a Government Mule at the House of Blues in California when I was still living out there before I relocated to Charlotte, where I am now. And I was like, who are these guys? And you just really kind of blew me away, because it's not often, being a fan that I am of the genre, that I encounter a group I had not heard of before that really kind of blows my doors off.
Well, we came along at a time when, nobody was really doing what we wanted to do, which was, we had a brass section, we had a Hammond B3 organ. We were an 8-piece band, and in most places we played couldn't almost even fit all of us, on the stage. It was really that, started with the fact that we all were, when we were like college age, and closely thereafter, around the Hartford and between Hartford and New York City shows. I think we probably hit every single P-Funk show that was happening from about 92 to when we finally opened for them in 98. So, which was really not even by design. It was just like, we had such a great crowd following, that we were able to open up for George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars at the Bayou Blues Festival, which happened this incredible venue, Croton on the Hudson, right on the Hudson River, and a beautiful day. And we were going on before them, and to see them sort of like, clip pane like filtering in through the crowd, and I could see them from the stage. They're out in the audience like watching us. And after the fact that me and the guys in my band in Deep Banana Blackout, we had been to countless, probably hundreds of shows together. It was electricity like I can't even describe. Just to we were at that time doing all original music when we opened up for them. So we had really come up though playing a lot of Sly and the Family Stone, James Brown, and P-Funk in our repertoire. And then like every third or fourth song, we would put one of our own songs in there. And so we kind of almost acted a little bit like I tried to, at least on the mic, tell people who we were covering. And we actually brought, I think, a lot of our fans that didn't know about that style of music, because a lot of those people in the 90s, they were not hip to James Brown and Funkadelic, and especially from this part of the country that we're in Connecticut. It really enlightened a lot of people to that genesis of music that really started with those three bands that we were covering.
Well, all right. We kind of jumped ahead a little bit. That's cool. And I remember that era so well. I remember every era of P-Funk since the 70s, but I have fond memories of that period too in the early 90s. But Jennifer, how did you first, get in a singing period? And, who were some of your, mentors and idols and things like that?
Well, I always wanted to sing, and when I was a little kid, I was singing opera in the playpen, because my Italian grandfather and my mother were just huge opera fans. Took us to the Met, saw a lot of opera, and from the time I was very little, I was always trying to imitate the opera. I think that's how I got a big sound. And then as I got older, I really was feeling the blues, feeling Led Zeppelin and Janis Joplin. And my first opportunity to sing with a rock band came when I was about 14 years old. I was on the school bus, and I had a Sony Walkman cassette player, and I had my headphones on, and I was singing along to whatever I was listening to. And all of a sudden I looked up, and there were these two guys that were in the seat in front of me that were facing me and just like staring at me like they couldn't believe what they were hearing. And they were like, we're guitar players, we have a band, and if you just stay on the bus one more stop, you can come over our house and try some songs with us. Do you know any of this Zeppelin? Do you know the Who? Do you know? And they're rattling off all this classic rock stuff that they were doing, and I was like, yeah, oh yeah, that sounds cool. So that was my first introduction to playing electric music, and it was rock and blues, and we played at the school jams, and people were pretty basically freaked out because I don't sound like what I look like, and that's because of my influences, which I have to say, I really had mostly male singers were my influence until I heard Aretha Franklin. And I kind of was a little bit late to the party with Aretha. I didn't discover her until I was in uh, my sophomore year of college. And I went to the library and borrowed a Never Loved a Man album. And I didn't give it back. I ended up having to pay for it because I had to keep it, you know. And that really began my love for gospel music. And I really enjoyed when I went to my second college after I didn't do so well, you know, in liberal arts college. I was bored. I didn't, you know, want to be there, partied too much, and I didn't really know what I knew I wanted to be a singer, but you know, everybody kind of said to me, well, you know, that's kind of a pipe dream, and you should really go to, you know, liberal arts college and, you know, get a degree so you can be a teacher. So I thought that was a good plan, but I didn't like it, and I didn't enjoy it, and I ended up getting in a lot of trouble and having a lot of bad experiences in college. And then I took a year off and worked in musical theater, which was great. My family, you know, are primarily dancers in musical theater. My aunt and uncle gave me a lot of opportunities to be in musical theater productions in which I got singing parts. So that was my first professional singing experience, but I didn't really fall in love with the idea of actually being a singer until I heard Aretha Franklin. So I have to give her number one props, you know. And oh, and Patti LaBelle as well. I just love that style of singing. And so when I went to Berkeley up in Boston, the first thing I did was audition for the gospel choir. And everybody was telling me, oh, you know, you never make it in on your first try. You're probably gonna have to be here for a couple of years before you'll get into the gospel choir. First time I got in. And it was, you know, for me, it was literally a dream come true because we really were singing, you know, with other voices that that just, and I really soaked it up, you know, the gospel music and singing in with such a big because I have a big voice. I was in the alto section, you know, and sitting with other, you know, girls around me who, you know, went on to have, you know, really amazing careers like Layla Hathaway and Kenya Hathaway. I were in the gospel choir at the time I was there, and Paula Cole, and gosh, you know, it was, and Susan Tedeschi. We were all in the choir right around the same time. And so, you know, those girls were highly inspirational to me. Their voices and their musicality, their ability to compose and do everything musically really made me excited about being a singer. But I knew pretty much that I wasn't interested in pop music, and I didn't want to be like a singer songwriter. And I knew that I needed to be in a band. I knew I needed to be in a large vehicle. And I had always, you know, really wanted to get with players, you know, that were better than me so that I could grow and that I could learn and try to rise to their level. So that worked pretty good at Berkeley, you know, being in the gospel choir around those guys. And yeah, that was when I really decided that, you know, I wanted to put together a big band and sing in a group.
Was there anything when you went to that school that was sort of challenging because you were sort of rough around the edges or whatever?
Oh yeah, I mean, there was definitely challenges in the sense that, you know, when you're, I am very, you know, how should I put this? I'm actually pretty shy. I really, I can sing in front of people, but I'm not like gonna, you know, like walk up to people that I don't know and strike up a conversation. You know, I feel like when I'm entertaining, I kind of go into this mode where it's like, because I kind of was raised in the theater and I performed a lot since I was young because of my family and those experiences, that is easy for me to get on stage and do stuff. But it's real different for me to like network and make friends with people. So, I kind of ended up working with people who approached me. So it was hard for me in the sense that I did not really know how to go about finding a network of people to work with. I just kind of ended up, you know, having to weed through a lot of different bands and different relationships before I found the guys in this band called Tongue and Groove. or actually they found me. You know, it was kind of like, you know, one of those things where I just felt like, gee, maybe music really isn't the thing for me, because, you know, I really wasn't feeling the pop music of the 80s. You know, I didn't really like the songs that I heard that on the radio or MTV. And I didn't really know who I was and all of that. I was like, you know, I'm like this weird, like, you know, Janice character that, you know, I didn't really know how else to fit in. So people kind of pegged me as like the, you know, I would sit in with blues bands and stuff. And they kind of would be like, oh, you sound great singing Janice tunes. You know any Janice tunes? And I'm like, yeah, I know them all, you know. Yeah, I mean, that was like the hardest thing for me, was just to find my own voice. You know, I did have some people, in my own family that were kind of like, you know, why are you trying to sound black? And to me, it wasn't like, I wasn't trying to sound like that. I was just trying to sound like what I liked, you know, and do that to the best of my ability.
Well, a lot of us want to do that, but we don't have the voice to back it up, you know?
I know. I feel like I'm always trying to match this sound that I hear in my head. And, you know, sometimes when I listen back to recordings, I think, gosh, I'm really off the mark. But that's why I think it's really important to have, you know, people who encourage you and tell you, hey, you know, you maybe you're not completely satisfied with what you're doing, but we like it. And that's what's great about having a band around you, you know, because they kind of give you the confidence with that. I don't think I, you know, really had at the beginning. That was the hardest part for me, was, you know, developing confidence. But, you know, that only comes with time.
It's funny how many, performers are sort of extroverts on stage and introverts off stage.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, playing a character that comes out on the stage. But I think that also, excuse me, lends itself to some of the depth and substance that a lot of the best performers and singers have. You know, when I first heard you, you conjured up some of my favorite singers, who are people like Shaka Khan and Tina Marie and Aretha, of course. And I figured Janice was in the mix somewhere there. So, yeah, I mean, those are, I hear those influences. I mean, you didn't mention some of those, but I feel like they're there.
Okay. It took me a while to find my own voice and my own sound, you know. I didn't want to be accused of imitating or trying to bite people's styles, you know. I definitely wanted the inspirations to shine through, but I was very, very, you know, when Deep Banana Blackout became an original band, we went from being Tongue and Groove, which, you know, really didn't have, like, maybe, I think we had maybe two originals. Then we went from being Tongue and Groove to being Deep Banana Blackout. For me, that was the turning point of saying, you know, I really think that we need to focus primarily on writing songs. And that's when I started working with Fuzz, the guitarist, and Eric Kalb, the drummer from Deep Banana Blackout, because they had the same feeling about original music. They didn't want to play, you know, in these cover bands, and which were all over Long Island and Connecticut. You know, this is an extremely um, competitive business. When you want to talk about people who are like amazing musicians in the, you know, Westchester County, Fairfield County, Long Island area, I mean, you got really some incredible musicians here. And the proximity to New York City made it so that, you know, everyone really competes a lot, and there's a lot of clubs in this scene, and you could play every night of the week and you could make money, but you had to play covers. And to me, I started to like really freak out, because I was like, you know, I didn't get into this to be, you know, a human jukebox. I really, you know, was like pushing the whole writing the original music thing. So, you know, when I found the right people, we had the right chemistry, and we sounded great doing the material that, you know, inspired me as, you know, as a singer. Then I just knew, this is it, you know. And I felt like, you know, I had found the right people, because I look around me at like the Etta James shows, and and all of the P-Funk shows we went to and the Bootsy shows that we went to. And I would see all the guys in my band were there with their girlfriends. I'd be like, I'm in the right band. We went to see Chaka Khan together, and Brothers Johnson opened up for them. And we saw Johnny Guitar Watson together. We saw one of his last performances before he died at Tramps in the city. And I got to tell you, Johnny Guitar Watson, I really need to give him some props too, because I really, he was a huge influence on me musically, as far as, I really got dialed into, this is what I want to sound like. This is the music that really gets me excited, makes me want to dance. And that's what we really wanted to do. Ultimately, I married Eric Kalb, the drummer from Deep Banana Blackout, back in 2000. And, he always just wanted to make people dance. And, I think that's why we, kind of birthed this great band together. And it was such a fun experience for everybody who would come to the shows, would dance the entire time. And for us, that's what it was about.
Now, was your brother also in the band, or you had a brother in the band, or?
Yeah, my brother played percussion. He actually joined the band when he was 16. And, of course, we told him, you got to finish high school. And then by the time we got on the road and went out to the West Coast for the first time, it was actually the day after he graduated from high school. So it worked out perfectly that we had taken him kind of on a tour right as he, were finished up with high school. And it was great. I mean, he had this awesome opportunity kind of right out of the gate, something that, we all had to work for, 10 or so years, kind of slugging it out on the cover scene and the bar band scene before we were able to do that. And that was largely in part to Warren Haynes and Government Mule. They really gave us the opportunity to go on the road with them and open up for them and play our music all over the country in places that we could never get into on our own. And that was an 11 show tour. We played 11 dates with them. I think, it took us about 3 weeks to do all those shows, because we had to follow them all over. We started at the Fillmore in San Fran, and then we went down to the House of Blues. We went in LA. Then we went down to Vegas, and we played with them all across Albuquerque, and we played in Tucson with them. We played in Dallas, and then we ended up, last date of the show, of this tour rather, was in New Orleans. And it was around that time that, Bernie was also playing keyboards with Government Mule. So that's around the time that then we started opening up for Bernie. And we all kind of became friends through that whole Government Mule tour experience. So,
Well,
yeah.
It really kind of set the stage, and I was there for some of that. So
Yes.
Very cool. So if I was to hear Tongue and Groove play a track, and then Deep Banana Blackout play, what would you say would be the main differences between those two sounds?
Well, the band's leader, is a male singer named Andrew Gromiller. And I mean, this guy sang everything from, Sam Cooke to Otis Redding. I mean, that he just had a voice like that. And he was such an incredible singer. And I used to go and see Tongue and Groove play when I was still kind of going through my phase of not really knowing what I was doing with music. And I was going back to college for philosophy at this point. I thought, oh, maybe I'll teach philosophy in college or something, and because I like to read, and I stumbled upon these guys. I think I bought a guitar at the local music store, and the guy who sold me the guitar said, hey, my band's playing at this Masters Sports Cafe or something. And, hey, I'm like, oh, really? What kind of songs do you do? And he's telling me, and I'm like, oh, you know any Aretha? So I went and I sat in with them that night and, sang a couple of Aretha tunes and Tell Me Something Good or something. And they were like, oh, wow, this is great. You should join the band. And I was just amazed by that, because they already had this fantastic lead singer, this guy. But, they wanted to have the male-female vocals. And that's when it really got to be the sound that I wanted to be a part of, which is like Funkadelic. We have like, many voices, male and female.
Mhm.
That's when it started to dawn on me that I could actually do something like that had that, like, the gospel vocals kind of feel with over the, like, heavy metal guitars and funky rhythms.
I mean, the time you guys came along too, I mean, it was like just kind of the post-grunge era, and you know, there hadn't been much funk at all. I mean, George Clinton was obviously still keeping it alive, and Prince was out there, but I mean, it was slim pickings for that kind of music at that time. So, I mean, you guys were really standing out and doing something different and going against the grain. But you also incorporated jam band elements and different kinds of flavors that
Right.
helped you get into a lot of different niches.
Yeah, I mean, we had so many great soloists in the band, and because we were all like just crazy about the that Denver's we had this Denver 76, I think it was the Earth tour, um with Dennis Chambers on drums. Oh my God, that we used to play those arrangements of those live shows because we were obsessed with it. I mean, we just like, we drive all over the country. Sometimes it's 8, 9 hours on the road every day, and we would just be listening to all of those old vintage. We got these bootleg recordings, and we were just always trying, because we played a different show every night. We never played the same show twice, as far as like we came up with all these different segues and stuff that would go in and out of our music, and the Sly and the P-Funk and the James Brown, and it just, it was a really, really phenomenal thing to be able to reference those grooves and those different arrangements that they played, in the live shows. That's what I think, we were able to really stretch out the solo sections, and make them, because really build, because you start bringing the dynamics down, and then you could build it up to that fever pitch, that by the end everybody comes in with that last chorus or that last, go round. It's just like everybody's just, panting and sweating and like, what?
Oh yeah.
Oh, get people really riled up, and that to me was the goal of every night, to just get people to be like, oh, I never danced like that before in my life, or wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy. People would be like jumping at the end, and
That's the glory right there.
yeah.
Jen, I want to talk a little bit more about the vocalizing part of it. So I think, it's not only being soulful, but there's also certain, sexiness to it, and sassiness, and how you deliver it. And, I hear that coming through you. And so, when you're actually doing that and performing, like, what's kind of going on inside you?
Well, again, I probably have to cite, a couple of huge influences, like Lynn Collins. Um, they called her the female preacher, and she laid it down. She had a way about her that was, no nonsense. She was breaking it down for the men, telling them what's what. and,
Better
and
think.
I really did adopt a lot of her personality. And really one of the greatest gifts of my life was getting to become friendly with Fred Wesley. He really, really loved the band, because we had invited him to do what we called boot camp. We had a series at the Wetlands nightclub in New York City, in 99, I think it was. It was 90, yeah, it was 99. And we invited him and Clyde Stubblefield to come and play with us, as well as Michael Ray and Marshall Allen from Sun Ra. And so we had like this incredible, sort of group of people that we were able to sort of introduce to the jam band scene, that were really the innovators of that sound, and to have Fred Wesley on stage wearing a Deep Banana Blackout t-shirt, standing next to me, doing a whole show of like, of what we did, which was, James Brown, P-Funk, Sly and the Family Stone, and our music. And he, played on our songs as well as all these other songs, and like we became friends with him, you know, and Clyde. They were so authentically happy that we were keeping the funk alive and that we were like the next generation, and they were, you know, tremendously helpful to us throughout the years. So Fred invited me to a show that he did at Joe's Pub later that year, where Lynn Collins was performing with him. So I actually got to meet and thank Lynn Collins for, you know, really kind of vocally and as an entertainer and stylistically, like really helped me get the sound that I have today, because we did a lot of songs by her as well as Vicki Anderson. So I would cite the James Brown female singers as, you know, probably along with Chaka Khan, for giving me the kind of persona that I kind of, you know, because I'm not me on that stage. That's not me, you know. I'm entertaining, and I put that on for people, and Tina Turner as well. I gotta definitely say Etta James, who I've seen, you know, probably over 100 times in concert.
Wow.
And I have to, a lot of the reason why I was able to see as many shows as I was after I graduated from Berkeley. I moved to New York City, and I worked as a receptionist at Sounds of Brazil, SOBs. And because I worked for Larry Gold, who was one of the biggest promoters in New York City, probably still is, I could go to any show I wanted pretty much on the guest list. So I did. And I probably, you know, that during that time that I worked at SOBs for 2 years, I saw everyone that, you know, from the jazz world, R&B, my heroes, and Etta James is certainly a big one. And she is real sassy. So I kind of, you know, I adopted that persona and that kind of style, because I really, and Aretha too, she had it as well.
Yeah.
But I can't honestly say that that's like naturally me. I'm not really like that. If I was getting up there and being me, and I was kind of boring.
Well, when you met Lynn, did it seem like that was really her? Was it her thing too?
Nope, she was like a sweet old grandma from Texas. But when she got up on stage, she was the female preacher. You know, I mean, it's
She got possessed.
We are the sum of all of the parts of the band. You know, it's really the chemistry of all of the people on stage, and you know, that's why being in a big band for me was always where it's at. I've always really wanted to do that, and you know, it was really exciting to meet Lynn, and they were about to go on like a European tour. So I think it was one of the last times she toured too, with as well. So that was really, you know, a great opportunity to you know, actually, you know, get to shake her hand and thank her for being who she was and her tremendous influence on me, you know.
That is great.
Yeah.
And Fred Wesley, I mean, he's just one of my very favorites, and I was fortunate enough to have him on a Truth and Rhythm episode. So very grateful for that. But him and Maceo, and they're my favorites.
Yeah.
Clyde, unfortunately, just passed away not too long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the hard part, you know, when as I do this show, I'm trying to get to everyone while they're still with us, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Boy, I'll tell you a great story about Clyde. You know, I brought him to the airport after the show, and we were singing Isley Brothers songs together, waiting, and you know, because we you know, he was several hours early for his flight. So, you know, we just kind of hung out in my car and listened to, I had all these different like mixtapes back then. I was still listening to cassettes in my car. And, you know, we were singing all these Isley Brothers songs together, and he had a good singing voice. And he was just, I mean, I couldn't believe the energy on that man. He was just incredible energy. And he was so funny too, because we would be like, all right, we're going to play Can't Stand It 76. And he's like, how does that one go? He would just be like, we'd all be sitting there like, that's the one that goes. And he's like, I'm just kidding. He was hilarious. hilarious. Oh, I miss
Wow.
him.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to put this up for the viewers. This was
Rowdy Duty.
probably my favorite
20
one.
years old.
You know, so many great tracks on here that I just love. Bump and Sway. It's actually hard to read all the tracks on here, but I wanted to let me get a better listing of the tracks here.
Well, I wanted to do a live album because I just love the energy that we got on stage. You know, we had made one studio record, and I remember being extremely frustrated that we just couldn't seem to get the sound like we had live, you know? So that's why when we made Rowdy Duty, I really wanted it to be a live album. And it was about 20 years ago that we put that record out.
Yeah, it's a 2 CD set, and besides Bump and Sway, I love Breakfast at Volo's. We're talking about, you know, kind of that swinging, sexy vibe. That definitely has it. And JB, Get Y'all in the Mood, big JB influence on that one. Almost 22 minutes of jamming. Take the Time, really hard rocking kind of track. Pure Gravy to me has sort of a P-Funk kind of groove.
Yep.
And a remake of the Headhunters track, God Made Me Funky.
Yes. Yes, I enjoyed the Bill Summers interview I saw that you did. You know, we also, something that we did as a band for about 10 years was go to the New Orleans Jazz Festival. So, yeah, so we were able to go and see Mike Clark and Bill Summers and a lot of the Headhunters, you know, playing in different projects at the New Orleans Jazz Festival. And you know, we certainly I've always loved playing that song in our, you know, when we were back in, some of us were in Tongue and Groove together, and that was a favorite, like definitely a favorite of all the not only the band members but of people in the audience too. So we got that requested a lot.
Yeah, there's a Funkadelic tie in there too, because Blackbird McKnight was part of the Headhunters. Yeah. Yeah,
totally. You know, and when we went to write our original music, it was really, you know, based off of like the Headhunters, that sound that they had. You know, we had the horns, and we had, you know, tremendous improv abilities. So it was, and we loved those gospel vocals, you know, like the R&B soul vocals over the jazz metal. I don't know what else to call it, but you know, or when we started actually doing some shows with John Schofield as well, and you know, around that, right around that Rowdy Duty time, because we were really, you know, we gained a lot of fans, you know, going out on the road with Government Mule and playing all these big festivals and big theaters around the country. So, you know, we ended up doing stuff with John Schofield as well, who, you know, you think of as kind of like a jazz fusion rock kind of, you know, and so we definitely, you know, had a lot of things going on with us. But I felt, as a singer, you know, I felt like I really always wanted to, you know, stay with the construction of the harmonic vocals, you know, that we have vocal harmonies, male and female, and singing together as much as possible, like Sly and the Family Stone and P-Funk.
I think Schofield did a cover of one of your songs, didn't he, on one of his records?
Well, he had my brother played, and my ex-husband Eric Kelb play on his Bump record. They recorded Bump with him.
Yeah, it's a pretty funky record.
Yeah. So he kind of like had a little bit of an homage to us on that record. I think one of those songs, Kelpers, is it? I can't remember. I think it's Kelpers.
Yeah, I got it around here somewhere.
It has a little nod to Deep Banana Blackout. Yeah, for sure.
And then later on, Skull Mule was a combination of him and Government Mule. So it's kind of all like, you know.
Yeah, the improv, you know, soul, jazz, funk. You know, we're so lucky, really, honestly, we we got to play with these legendary people that were our heroes. And it really, finally, ultimately, I left Deep Banana Blackout because I got an opportunity to work with Bernie Worrell. And I was, I felt like that was just an opportunity that, I had never expected anything like that to ever be possible for me. It took me completely by surprise at a government mule show, actually, when I was backstage talking with Bernie and Judy. And I'll tell you, they just brought me into their family. They just were wonderful. I went on the road with them for 2 years and had the time of my life, and got to sing a lot of like really rare funkadelic that like George and the All Stars weren't playing, with these tunes that Bernie was selecting from a very specific era of P-Funk that he really wanted to do in his show. So that for me was just like amazing. And
let me just read some of these tracks, Jen,
yeah.
Because you're on this one, and for me, if you're a diehard longtime P-Funk fan, hearing some of these tracks pulled out and done is just a dream. You guys did Super Stupid, You and Your Folks, Me and My Folks,
Yeah.
Biological Speculation,
My favorite,
Standing on the Verge, and then other stuff that's played every now and then, but very cool. Red Hot Mama for the Downstroke, Gaming on Ya.
Oh yeah,
really cool stuff.
Smokey. I don't know if Smokey's on there, but we used to do Smokey.
Mm-hmm.
We used to do Trash a Go-Go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I every once in a while, we'll do something with Clip and Danny Bedrosian, and we'll go back and we'll hit that Bernie rep, just for fun. And I just remember those days. It's just, it was the best, some of the best of my life.
This band was good too. I mean, you had Greg Fitz on keyboards, John Hickey on the guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had Donna back on bass, and she just like Lady Bass was that's what Bernie called her, and she just had just this incredible sound. Donna, she just and then singing with Greg Fitz. I mean, his voice and his keyboard playing. He was in Bootsy's Rubber Band and Quasar, and he's a guy that you should interview. He is got some great stories. I would just be on, in the van, just like asking him questions and listening to stories and tell me about this and and oh, I remember that show. Oh, I saw you with Bootsy. Oh my God, that was you. It was incredible. And at one time, I remember him looking at me and going, you're just like a fan, aren't you? You're a fan. And I'm like, yeah, it's amazing to me that I ended up in this world, doing what I'm doing. It's kind of like a Cinderella story, a little bit incredible.
When you're performing with this group, I mean, did you get much direction from Bernie or anyone else, or did they just say, we're doing this, do your thing?
Yeah, the other singers for the Woo Warriors before me had done such an incredible job, and I was really working off of those tapes and the arrangements that they had sung on, and some of the Brides of Funkenstein, and we're talking about people who I had been idolizing and listening to on vinyl for years. So for me, it was an opportunity to just do that to the best of my ability, so it was awesome. Yeah, I mean, Bernie really just he loved to rehearse, and we always rehearsed right before a tour. We'd have like a 3 or 4 hour rehearsal, and it was great. I mean, every night was there was always some unexpected thing that he would do, because he loved to have like a little solo section maybe in between songs as a segue from one to another. And then we wouldn't know what, like, for example, if we were going to come in with Game It On Ya, we'd all just be like waiting for that first note and waiting for him to, and he would mess with us, he would just be like, and all of a sudden start playing Benny and the Jets or something. you know, like he just had so much fun on stage. But it was like, don't sleep. Don't kick back and think you got time, because when you least expect it, it's going to be the downbeat's going to be there. You better be ready.
Absolutely.
It was a blast.
What was there any single show that stands out in particular from that experience?
Yeah, there was a show that we played, I think, at Lillian's in Austin, Texas, that we played for 3 hours straight, no stops. I mean, it was impressive. I mean, I was just, the band was just so impressive to me. They were, I play a little bit of hand percussion, but I mean, these guys were literally played a 3 hour set with no break, And the drummer for Bernie at the time, with Gary Sullivan, I just fell madly in love with him, and we ended up having 2 kids together.
You and drummers.
Yeah, I love to play hand percussion too. I mean, I guess I'm, deep down I'm a frustrated drummer inside. But yeah, drums to me are the most important part of the band. So, but I couldn't believe that night he literally played for over 3 hours without a break, and he was.
Did they just stretch out the songs, or did they play more songs?
I think we played the stretching out was pretty massive. There was just a lot of improv. There was a lot of, just taking it out. And something that that I loved to do was, like, if you heard something that sounded like a chord progression for like a Beatles song, and you just touch it for a second, play like Come Together for a second, and then go back into what we were playing before. And I love that. That to me is really exciting. And I know the audience gets pumped by that too, because they're like, oh, did you hear they went there? And that's kind of like a Grateful Dead thing too, like the Grateful Dead always opened up those sections, and then they would lose the one sometimes, and you wouldn't, and then all of a sudden they'd come back in on the one, and it would just, the excitement just builds when you do that. And that night at Lillian's was like that. It was like you really didn't know what was going to happen, and then all of a sudden you turn around and it's like 3 hours later, and we haven't taken a break. It was packed. It was not a very big club. It had high ceilings, but it was packed. And I just remember being in there and being like, almost like no time went by, and I looked at what time it was and thought, did we hit like a time warp or something? Because we were all just so engaged in it.
Yeah. And Bernie would sometimes throw in even TV themes and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He was just such an incredible band leader, and subsequently after that, when he played with the Bernie Worrell Orchestra, I got to sit in with that group a few times, and we got to open up for that group a few times with my most recent project before Bernie passed. So, that became like a long standing relationship and a great friendship. And he was just a big mentor to me, and, always will be. Always, I don't think a day goes by when I don't listen to Woo Together. Getting to sing that one, that was a big one. Getting to sing Woo Together and Baby, I Owe You Something Good. He gave me the opportunities to sing stuff that, frankly, was just like, I mean, I never even dreamed of some of the opportunities and experiences I got thanks to Bernie. Like I got to play one time with Leo Nocentelli and Felicia Collins from the Late Night Show with Bernie. Because Bernie just invited me to this jam that was going on at BB King's, and Bernie just invited me. He's like, "Yeah, come along. Yeah, we'll get you up and sing on a few." And it was like Stanley Jordan was there, like all these big stars, and Bernie's like, "Yeah, come on, why don't you sing one with us?" And I would just be like, "What?" It was really a thrill.
Some people, I remember, but for a very short period, Bernie was part of the late night band where he met Felicia.
Right.
That didn't last. It seemed like that was going to be weird, because he's definitely not, or was a square peg in a round hole for that kind of situation.
I feel like, he really could do anything because, his training and what his ear, he just was so outside the box with everything, he could really do it all.